Hi, Alicia, and very welcome to my hoof summer talk.
Thank you for
It's,
having me.
yeah, it's a great honor and a great pleasure to be able to do this interview with you today. We haven't actually met, but you have a very good reputation about what you do for the horses, and that's widely known. And you are the owner of the Humble Hoof and help horses with to maintain strong, healthy, and sound feet. So I will let you introduce yourself to all the horse people in Sweden. So please let us know who you are, where you live, and how you started your hoof care business.
Sure. Yep. So my name's Alicia Harlov, and I'm actually just north of Boston in Massachusetts. And I started out as a public school teacher, and I was riding, I started riding when I was 7 years old and never really thought I would do anything professional with horses. It was just a hobby. And I was a public school teacher, and I had a horse that was on and off lame for a month or so. I had the vet out, and the vet diagnosed him with navicular disease. He had enthesiophytes, or bone spurs, off the sides of his navicular bone. He had navicular cysts. And actually later we did an MRI and found that he had torn his deep digital flexor tendon in both front feet. So the vet basically had mentioned that, this is a degenerative disease and he's just going to get worse, and eventually, he'll have to be retired or euthanized because of this diagnosis. And I was unwilling to just accept that. I wanted to see if there's any way that I could help him or get him sound again. And that sort of started my obsession with hoof care. And when it got to the point that I was studying about feet more than I was focusing on my teaching of children in school, I decided it was time for me to leave teaching and go into hoof care. And I went through progressive hoof care practitioners school, and I've taken clinics from all over the country, from California to Georgia to New Hampshire. And I also visited Rockley Farm in England 6 years ago now. And yeah, it's just been an ongoing journey ever since then.
Yeah, we have that in common. I also started my hoof career with navicular disease.
Yeah.
So I know what you're going through.
Yeah.
When rehabilitating horses, you used to talk about the importance of diet and movement in regards to hoof health. Will you please tell us a little bit more how diet may help the hoof quality?
Yeah, definitely. So it's not that hard of a stretch to think about how diet affects a horse's foot, because if we think about people, if you're eating a lot of sugar or junk food or things that are processed and not healthy, we might get more headaches, or we might get achy, our joints might hurt more, we might feel more stiff. And I've heard people say that when they go on, a diet of just like vegetables and whole foods and meat, that they actually end up feeling better. They feel less achy. So with horses, if we're considering a species appropriate diet, which means forage first, that can in turn allow their entire body to function better. And when their body is healthier, there's less inflammation in the body and in the soft tissue, then their hoof capsule is actually going to grow stronger because the lamina connection is healthier, there's less inflammation, and the quality of the hoof horn is going to be better because they're getting the nutrients they need to grow a healthier foot. So whenever I come to a horse that is a new client to me, the first thing I ask is, what is the owner feeding? And most of the time they say, oh, they get hay and X amount of grain a day. And so often that grain that we feed horses has tons of sugar or molasses or added iron or just ingredients that are fillers and can be inflammatory in the horse's body. And so I ask owners to eliminate, most of the time, to eliminate grain completely and instead switch to a forage-based mineral balanced diet. So something like Timothy hay pellets or, you know, Speedy Beet. Some horses do better on that than others, but something that's a forage-based diet, which then is balanced with minerals that are high in copper and zinc, which is needed for a good lamina connection, healthy hoof wall, good sole depth, and good amounts of amino acids for protein. Salt and magnesium and vitamin E are the ones that I focus on the most. And you often will see a new hoof grow down from the top that's a much tighter hoof capsule, that's a lot stronger quality. You can grow up cracks in the foot. You can gain sole depth and reduce sole sensitivity, and have horses that suddenly went from being crippled if they lost a shoe to a horse that then could move over any surface comfortably and not notice if they're on stones or if they're on, you know, in a sand arena.
Yeah. Is it like a basic first aid or thing that you normally just do, regardless if they need it or not?
Yes. So I always say that this diet is good for any horse, even if they don't have any soundness issues, or if they seem like they are moving fine over different surfaces. I always say that it's just better for the body to function healthier. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a good advice for people who listen to this to just start with the basic,
Right.
and then you don't need to do any analysis or stuff like that.
Yeah. So, are you talking about hay analysis?
Yeah, many times it can be difficult to analyze what minerals and vitamins the specific horse needs.
Right.
Like if you draw a blood sample or hay analysis, there's all kinds of different tests.
Right.
And it's very difficult to know where to start.
Yeah, and some people ask me about blood testing for mineral balancing, or even hair analysis of, you know, some people like pull pieces of their horse's mane to do a hair analysis. And both of those to me have a lot of downfalls because, you know, it's just measure, for example, a blood test, the minerals in the blood are so tightly regulated in the body that you won't, you know, otherwise the horse would die. If they just had this huge excess of a mineral in their blood, their body couldn't handle it. So their body actually stores a lot of minerals in their tissue, and testing their blood isn't really going to give you an accurate representation of what is high and low in the horse's diet or what they're absorbing or not. And same with hair analysis. There's some evidence that it's actually okay for testing for heavy metal toxicity, but when it comes to minerals, the hair analysis is just a moment in time, and it's basically showing you the past. It's showing you what's happened in the past, but maybe not what's happening at that moment. But we know through history of hay tests, which I know a lot of people can't do logistically because they don't always get hay from the same supplier. But we know that across the board, around the world, hay is high in iron and low in copper and zinc. And that is something that we can remedy by not supplementing iron and by feeding copper and zinc. And in some areas, I know in the States that there are some databases we can go through to look for common, you know, issues in the hay for our area, so that we can kind of guess at how much copper and zinc to feed, or if our area, you know, tends to be really low in phosphorus or that year or something. We can check the hay tests to see what might need to be added. But if you're gonna just go for super basic, then not feeding iron and feeding copper and zinc and amino acids so that your horse can utilize the protein in their hay and forage is a good first step in making sure they're getting what they need.
Yeah, that's a great advice, to start out with something, because it's so difficult. It's just a whole wide world with all these minerals and vitamins going on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have a good um, brand in
Yeah,
the
I don't actually know in your area, but in the United States, there's a handful of supplements that are really good. Vermont Blend is great. California Trace Plus is really good. Arizona Copper Complete from Horse Tech is really good. Mad Barn is actually out of Canada, but they'll ship to the States. They're really good. And I think more and more supplement companies are starting to realize that this is something people are pushing for. I know that in the UK, Forage Plus and Progressive Earth are two really good brands, and I think they do ship to Europe as well in some instances. I'm not sure if that's changed.
Yeah, I heard about it.
Yeah, and then in Australia, Carol Layton makes supplements, and I actually don't know the brand name of them. I just know Carol because I've actually taken webinars with her. But she makes mineral supplements for Australia that you can also get in New Zealand. And I'm sure that there are others around the world that I just don't know about yet.
Do you come up with a nutrition plan for the horse together with the owner, or is
Yeah.
that what you normally do, or how do you do when you rehab a horse?
Yes. So often I'll ask the owner, what is their expectation for this horse? Is this horse in heavy work? Does it have a history of being an easy keeper or a hard keeper? How much hay do they get? And if they get a consistent supply of hay, because all of those things are going to influence what I might recommend to feed the horse. And I'm not a nutritionist, but I do really like studying diet stuff. So, the first thing I'll tell any owner is feed, if the horse is a hard keeper, for example, feed as much hay as you can. And if that is not giving the horse enough calories, then they either really need to test the hay and see if it's low in digestible energy or low in protein, or they might need to figure out if their horse has gut issues or parasite issues, or maybe early Cushing's, which can actually cause weight loss and top line loss before they jump to feeding grain, for example. And then if an owner has an easy keeper, I still want them getting forage, maybe in slow feed nets instead of just easy access, but obviously no grain, and then the minerals in some kind of forage delivery carrier. And that, there are kind of those two avenues that I start with. And then after that, we can troubleshoot if I notice the horse isn't doing as well, or if the horse seems like it's in heavier work, needs more calories, we might add in something to boost that. Or if the horse is a really easy keeper and their feet are still struggling, we might try to boost the copper and zinc more, or add some more amino acids or something that we know will help with that hoof quality. But those are the two main avenues that I start with. Is the horse an easy keeper or hard keeper? Is it in work or not? And are there any other health issues that might be affecting how they're growing their feet and how they're thriving in their own body?
Yeah. And let's take the grain away.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And like I said, for both of those instances, whether it's a hard keeper or an easy keeper, I've found that you can find solutions for your horse without needing to add grain for calories. There are forage-based options that can add calories for a hard keeper or a horse in work.
Yeah, that sounds great. And I want to talk about what got you into this hoof word, and that's about the navicular disease and how you deal with horse owners that has been, or horses that have been diagnosed with the navicular system. Or
Yeah. I think navicular is one of the most misunderstood issues in like in terms of distal limb lameness, like hoof related or lower limb related lameness. Navicular is really misunderstood. And basically it's a catch-all term for pain in the back half of the foot. So if a horse has a lameness evaluation and the vet gives them a nerve block where they numb that heel, so it's a palmar digital nerve block where they can no longer feel their heel, and then that horse becomes sound, then the vet will say, okay, it seems like there's some navicular issues. So then they'll take an x-ray, and if on that x-ray they see that there's bone damage or changes to the navicular bone, then they'll assume that that horse has navicular disease, or it'll actually be diagnosed with navicular disease because the bone has changes to it. The only issue with that is that we know that changes to the navicular bone, so navicular bone damage or remodeling, or even navicular bone cysts, don't necessarily cause pain. There are horses that have really wonky looking navicular bones, or have, you know, lollipop lesions in their navicular bone, or have all kinds of these different shapes or contours in their bone that are perfectly sound. So we can't just always blame a lameness on that navicular bone, which then had me thinking, okay, if it's not coming necessarily from the bone, maybe it is, but maybe it's not. How do we figure out what is causing the pain? So whenever I come to a navicular diagnosed horse, I want to go through a process of elimination to make sure that anything else that could be causing pain is removed. And then if everything else that could be causing pain is removed and the horse is still lame, then I'll say, okay, it might be that the navicular bone is actually causing pain, and we'll figure out a way to help manage that. So the first thing I'll do, like I said, is ask the owner to adjust diet. Even if the horse has perfect metabolic blood work, you know, has been not diagnosed with laminitis, doesn't have any history of having, you know, heat or pulses in the feet or anything that would make the owner think the horse has a sensitivity to diet, I have the owner change diet, because if you can grow a healthier hoof, then maybe the horse can compensate for whatever damage is inside that hoof capsule, or damage to the bone. And with that, I want the owner to also really pay attention to the frog health. So obviously the frog is in the back half of the foot. And if that isn't healthy, then a horse can land toe first to try to avoid their frog or avoid frog pain. It can cause lameness if their frog is really infected with thrush. If they have a deep central sulcus thrush infection, that horse can be really painful and lame. And that's a very or relatively easy fix when you're looking at that compared to, oh, my horse has navicular bone damage that I can't do anything about. So we change diet. We really make sure we treat the frog to get that horse landing comfortably on the back half of its foot. And then even if that horse has some internal soft tissue damage, like my own gelding had deep digital flexor tendon tears, and you know, horses that have impar ligament tears or collateral ligament tears, if they're able to get a comfortable frog and the inflammation in their hoof is calmed down through diet, and they're willing to start weighting the back half of their foot and landing heel first, then we can think of that as physical therapy for those internal structures. So it's almost like when we go to physical therapy after we've had an injury and we're slowly trying to work our tendons and ligaments in a proper way again, that is what we're doing through heel first landings. And it can start to heal deep digital flexor tendon tears and collateral ligament tears and impar ligament tears. And once those feel better and the digital cushion is getting stronger from stimulation, the frog is getting stronger from treating thrush and landing properly, and the hoof is growing in better. Sometimes, not always, but a lot of the time, a horse can forget that they have navicular bone damage. You know, it suddenly doesn't bother them as much if we're addressing all the things around it to allow them to compensate for that.
Yeah, that is amazing. It sounds fantastic.
And it doesn't, and I'm not, you know, I always tell everyone there's no guarantee. I'm not going to walk into a situation with any horse, no matter what lameness issue it is, but I'm never going to walk into a situation and say, okay, we're going to get your horse 100% just with these 3 steps, you know, because every horse is such an individual and there's so many different factors at play. But, you know, Rockley Farm, where I visited in 2015, they specialize in navicular rehab, and they have something like an 85% success rate of getting horses back up to the same level of work or higher than before they went lame. And I think 85% sounds pretty good, even though there's that like 15% that maybe won't respond. 85 is enough hope for me to try this with every navicular horse I see.
Absolutely, absolutely. Do you have a good advice treating thrush?
Yeah, so one of the best things to treat thrush is movement, honestly, over, good varied terrain to stimulate the frog. But obviously that's, we have to make sure that we're actually putting something on it to try to get rid of the bad microbes. So again, diet, I'll always come back to that, but diet helps the tissue to grow in stronger and is the stronger tissue can fight off that bacteria better than if it's a weak, tissue that's not being fed nutrient wise. And then I personally like Red Horse products. They're a company out of the UK, but I can get the products in the States. So I assume that they ship,
Yeah, I think they do.
over a lot of different countries. And for really deep central sulcus infections, the first thing I grab is a product called Hoof Stuff by Red Horse, which is basically cotton fibers, honey, and zinc oxide. And you just pack it as deep as you can into the central sulcus until that starts to open up. And if it's more shallow, or once that opens up, the horses kind of graduate to either Ardamud, which is another one of their clay products, or field paste. Those are ones that I go to first. I know that there are lots of different kinds of topical things we can put on thrush. I tend to stay away from ones that have really drying ingredients, or like, alcohol, or things that are going to be drying out the frog, because that can cause these little like micro fissures in the tissue, which then, it might kill the thrush, but then it could leave that frog more open to bacteria in the future. So I like more natural, gentle ingredients that will also target the microbes that we don't want around. So we want to foster a good environment and foster a healthy frog while also getting rid of the stuff we don't want.
It sounds easy, but it's quite complicated, isn't it?
Yeah. Right. Yeah, I know. It's like it's when it comes to hooves, there's nothing that's super, easy in terms of, if we want a really healthy foot, we have to put in the time and the effort.
Yeah, isn't that always the case?
Right.
So if we let me round up this call and then the interview. Is it something special that if you had one thing that you could help horses hoof with, what's the only thing that you would do or change?
I'm going to probably sound like I'm going to go against what I was just talking about, but the biggest thing I would say is movement. And, there's a hashtag that my friend uses a lot, called Friends Forage Freedom. So basically allowing a horse to have freedom of movement. So not like living in a stall or living in a tiny paddock alone, but basically freedom of movement out in a herd and access to forage. And I would choose freedom of movement in a good environment. I know this sounds crazy, but I would choose that over changing diet. If the owner can only do one of the two, I would say I want that horse moving as much as possible over various terrain and stimulating those feet. Because, think about Mustangs in the wild. They're moving so much, and they're not getting vitamins and minerals that we focus on. But the more we contain our horses, I think the more that we have to micromanage their diet and their management, and their, what we're doing with them, as opposed to if these horses are out moving and in a herd and able to stimulate their feet the proper way, it's going to grow a healthier foot.
Yeah, that's awesome. So to take away with us is movement and diet.
Yes. those are the two main focuses of what I try to incorporate. Yeah.
Yeah. Are you up for a challenge?
Sure.
I think when you come to Sweden or talk to Swedish people, you should probably know some Swedish words about hooves, of course.
Sure.
So the bars at the horses is hörnstöd in Swedish. Could you say that?
Hörnstöd.
That's pretty good. Doing great. And here comes the frog. Stråle.
Oh gosh. Strule.
Yeah, that's good. You're doing great.
I'm not one for languages. This is hard.
You will fix this perfectly. So thank you for playing around with me.
Yeah, thank you for talking with me and being willing to chat. So this is fun.
Yeah, I wish you a great summer, and I'm so thankful that you're taking your time to talk to me on the Hoof Summer Talk. It's been very interesting and excited to get to know you better.
Yeah, you too. It was nice to meet you over
Yeah,
this.
nice meeting you too. Thank you so much.
Yeah, have a great rest of your day.